Aaron? Wonder where he went. Maybe this audio file he has open will tell me what's on his mind.
No Patreon and no persona.
No Patreon and no persona make Aaron go crazy.
Well, that's worrying. Whoa. Aaron.
What do you think, Ryan? All I need's an episode name. I'm thinking no Patreon and no persona make Aaron go something.
Go crazy?
Don't mind if I do!
Aaron, wait. Before you go on a rampage, please remember, we still have patreon.com/RecessCastProductions. For less than the cost of keeping this shitty hotel open, people can support our show. Then you can get your persona.
Wait, really?
Yes, but only if people listening go to patreon.com/RecessCastProductions. As in, like, right now.
Urge to kill fading. Come, Ryan. Let's go play some Persona 4. Available now on Steam for only $19.99. Everyone else, they can enjoy the show. Just remember, when your old man starts trying to murder your family, use that shin of yours, and we'll come a-running. I'm Jack with Torrance, and this is the After Credits Cast, the only film podcast to be picked up by those with the shine. With me today, I have Hal Ryan Metters.
How'd you like some ice cream, Doc?
That's a little creepy, actually. And then,
yeah, I'm sorry.
And we have a guest this week, Derek Rick Torrance, because I only have like 3 characters to make names with.
Well, you guys can come take your medicine.
Is that Nurse Ratched? Oh, God.
If you want to follow us on various platforms of choice, we have Patreon, YouTube, Peepa, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, you know the rest, Stitcher, TuneIn, etc. You can also follow us on social media. That is, what do you call it? Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, all that stuff. And then, Ryan, if they want to email us directly, where could they email us at?
They could email us at Your Money's No Good Here, Mr. Torrance. Excuse me. Felt like I was being possessed for a hot second. That's evacstation@gmail.com.
And before I forget, the intro song for this season is various remixes of Lavender Town, because it's spooky. Why not? Gentlemen, are you ready to talk about today's movie?
Yes, I am.
And
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, we have no better film to talk about than 1980s Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Written by Stephen King, Stanley Kubrick, and Diane Johnson, the film made a total of $46 million, which is a little over half of what it cost.
Jeez.
Bit of a cult hit there. But it has gone on since release to become one of the bigger cult hits out there, actually. Still very much talked about in various film circles.
I'm more just trying to figure out what the 46,000 was for.
You mean million?
46 million was for.
The 8,000 shots per shot that Stanley Kubrick did, maybe?
Yeah,
that's probably it.
He's notorious for reshoots, which we'll get to in the fun facts, I believe.
Probably it.
We got a pretty good cast here, including Tony Burton, Ann Jackson, Joe Turkel, Philip Stone, Barry Nelson, Scatman Crothers, Danny Lloyd, Shelley Duvall, and you don't know Jack Nicholson, but he danced the devil in the pale moonlight.
Jeez.
He didn't have anywhere near enough makeup on in this film.
This film has 4 award wins. Nothing super notable, but we'll get to them. Saturn Award for Best Supporting Actor, and Best Part and part of a Best DVD Collection for the 2012 Stanley Kubrick Collection. It's in the National Film Registry Preservation Board, and a Motion Picture OFTA Film Hall of Fame Award as well. So, yeah, not bad.
Fantastic.
Ryan, I'm going to turn it over to you for some fun facts, and I
right.
apologize. You have a lot of them.
I do. I only have 4 of them, but they are 4 weighty facts. So let's dive in here. Despite Kubrick's fear demands on everyone, Nicholson admitted to having a good working relationship with the director. It was with Duvall that he had a completely different director. Direction or relationship.
Words.
Yes. Words are hard. He allegedly picked on her more than anyone else, as seen in the documentaries Making the Shining in 1980 and Stanley Kubrick, A Life in Pictures, which was in 2001. He would really lose his temper with her, even going so far as to say that she was wasting the time of everyone on set. She later reflected that he was probably pushing her to her limits to get the best out of her, and that she wouldn't trade the experience for anything, but it was not something she would ever wish to repeat. Yeah, that makes sense. That poor girl looks so damn stressed.
Well, yeah, no joke.
Right. Well, next up, in an interview in the June 1986 issue of American Film, King said, "It's like a great, big, beautiful Cadillac with no motor inside. You can sit in it and enjoy the smell of the leather upholstery. The only thing you can't do is drive it anywhere. So I would do everything different." The real problem is that Kubrick set out to make a horror picture with no apparent understanding of the genre. Everything about it screams that from beginning to end, from the plot decisions to the final scene. In particular, King disliked the casting of Nicholson as Jack Torrance. This was because he felt that in the novel it was pivotal that Jack was initially a good man who was slowly overcome by the forces of evil and who was fighting a losing battle against alcoholism. King was of the opinion that due to the casting of Nicholson, who was well known for playing unstable characters, Jack in the film was very much on edge when the story begins. I 100% agree on that.
Yeah.
And the character does not possess the inner goodness that's so vital to Jack in the novel. King wanted to cast someone who could play the character as more genial in the early stages. Apparently, he was very keen on Jon Voight. That's a wonderful what if for you. He was also hugely disappointed that the themes of the evils of alcoholism and the disintegration of the family unit were relatively unimportant in the film due to his own battle with alcoholism. And because of this personal investment in that aspect of the novel, he was largely disheartened by the film. The Shining was eventually readapted as a 1997 miniseries that followed King's book much more closely. We gotta note that because I really want to talk about that. I really want to talk about that particularly for the bonus episode, because the bonus episode made me like this movie a hell of a lot more. But I digress. But jot that down somewhere. Next fact. Because Danny Lloyd was so young, and because it was his first acting job, Stanley Kubrick was highly protective of the child. During the shooting of the movie, Lloyd was under the impression that the film he was making was a drama, not a horror movie. In fact, when Wendy carries Danny away while shouting at Jack in the Colorado Lounge, she's actually carrying a life-sized dummy so that Lloyd would not have to be in the scene. He only revealed the truth several years later, when he was shown a heavily edited version of the film. He didn't see the uncut version of the film until he was 17, 11 years after he made it.
Jeez.
Jeepers.
That's pretty crazy.
But, I mean, he probably shouldn't have seen the film at 7 or 8 years old.
I'm pretty sure I was 8, so...
Oh, man. All right. So, last fun fact. Most of the elaborate urban legends and conspiracy theories surrounding this film, ranging from it serving as a Holocaust metaphor to a confession that Kubrick helped fake the moon landings.
Totally did it. Totally true.
They were all refuted by Stanley Kubrick during his lifetime or later by the surviving cast and crew. For example, the famous impossible corridors are a result of set logistics. Kubrick wanted to shoot Danny on his big wheel in unbroken takes, so the hallways had to connect, and the only way the crew could construct them to fit Kubrick's vision meant mirroring the set to fit available sound space stage. The shadow of the helicopter in the opening shot was also the result of just a framing error.
Yeah, so that you can kind of get some hints there that with all the reshoots, how he treats the cast and the how the sets were made, this movie was not going to be cheap.
Yeah, that makes sense. 'Cause I, like when I heard the budget originally, I'm like, wait a second, like they had to rent out the resort, the hotel, sure, but I mean, like horror films are generally like notoriously cheap to make, which is why they're great investments because they get you a wonderful return. How did he? And then I remembered it was Stanley Kubrick.
Yep.
So yeah, that makes sense.
Kubrick is no John Carpenter,
No. No.
which is both good and bad.
All right. So what do we think for our initial thoughts, gentlemen, before we get into the synopsis?
Well, Derek, if you'd like to give us your initial thoughts, just a little quick bit, and we'll jump into
Sure.
synopsis here in a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I love this movie. I've grown up with this movie. It was my dad's favorite horror movie, so I can't even count how many times I've seen it. I love the visuals. I understand the flaws in the story. I really do, and on a lot of them I do agree with Stephen King about Jack Torrance in the movie being bad from the start and really just a crappy father and husband. But I do love the movie. I love a good slow burn. I don't need a bunch of gore and stuff. I like atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do love this movie.
I'll chime in here. I think it holds up as one of my favorites of the genre. So, spoilers for my review at the end. While it may not be a full-on as scary as some other films out there we've talked about, it understands horror and psychology and plays with it just in the right ways to really stay on the narrative first and foremost, and that's what pulls me in. I really love what it does, and visuals, perfect. Great visuals, all the way. Kubrick knows what he's doing.
Yeah. Well, I largely agree with both of you, gentlemen. Like, I'm not a huge fan of horror, but this, like, is definitely one of the top. It doesn't do a whole bunch in, like, terms of jump scares, but it really, like, likes to creep on your, like, on the tension level, so it's just kind of, like, slowly throttling the tension of the film up to a point where you're starting to feel like a similar amount of discomfort just being in this place. So it almost kind of it almost seeks to mirror the isolation that they were supposedly going through as well. So I thought it was fantastically shot. I thought it's a great story. Again, yes, Jack looked like he was insane from jump. And the consequences of him like dealing with alcoholism really wasn't evident for me personally in the movie until I saw the sequel. But aside from all of those things, I still think it's a fantastic piece of cinema and well worth preserving.
Mm-hmm. Can't wait to get to that sequel. That's gonna be a fun conversation. So let's jump into the synopsis, and then we'll get right into the thick of it. Recovering alcoholic, Jack gets a job at the Overlook Hotel, or to overlook the Overlook Hotel, for the winter, in hopes that the seclusion from the world will allow him to write that award-winning novel he's been stewing on for years. As a fellow writer, I can guarantee you this wouldn't have worked ever. Jack brings his family to the hotel, including his frazzled wife and his son, who has horrible visions of events yet to come. He assumes it's just his invisible friend Tony messing with him. As a fellow mental patient, I guarantee you this is not going to work out. The son, Danny, meets Dick at the hotel, who tells him about these weird psychic powers they both have. They call it shining. Roll credits. He also warns Danny to stay out of room 237, and not in a way that is at all together meaningful. Actually, a lot of his advice is very vague and could have used a little more detail to avoid the fate that befalls his family later. Oh well, movie's got a movie. The staff leaves, and the family is left all alone to watch the hotel over the winter, which gets buried in snow at some point due to a blizzard. All the while, Jack is unproductive and constantly blaming interruptions from his wife and son instead of his own inability to think up good ideas or to be more self-motivated. Danny is haunted by the ghosts, but none of which actually hurt him, at least for a while. Wendy, the wife/mom, does her best to keep everyone happy, but the tensions wear thin quick. Danny happens upon room 237 and leaves with bruises on his neck. Jack goes to investigate and makes out with a gross old woman ghost before lying to his wife that nothing ever actually happened. He then goes to the bar and drinks with the ghost as he slips back into his old addictions. This better allows the ghost to manipulate him into hating and eventually going after his family. Bird diddly erdler. Wendy wants to take Danny to the hospital because she's a responsible parent. Jack wants to murder them both because he's lost his mind. And Danny just wants to get away from the ghost because he's the only one who has realized this is a horror film, ironically. And Halloran finally returns to save them, only for Jack to ask him a question. Boom, shots fired. Jack chases his family into a giant hedge maze, but gets lost. Danny and Wendy escape and go on to live a mostly happy life we will see glimpses of in Dr. Sleep. Jack dies frozen in the snow, but a picture reveals he may have been a part of the hotel the whole time. It's a little unclear. And that's the movie, right there. Word for word. So, gentlemen, what do you think? Good stuff?
Oh, yeah. I have something I thought about when I watched this movie.
Yeah.
Well, it must be this time. So, much like when I watched Raiders of the Lost Ark again and realized that you didn't need Indiana Jones and everything would have happened exactly the same if he wasn't in the movie. The Shining is almost completely unnecessary in this movie. His abilities. All his abilities do is bring old Scatman Carruthers back to the hotel to get murdered. He does nothing.
Although, to be fair, Scatman does bring the working snowcat so they can escape.
Yes. So, as a plot device,
Yep.
he's also that lovely 70s and 80s and 60s trope of horror
The
movies.
magical black man.
The magical black man.
The
where
magical black man.
His only point is to teach the white kid his abilities and then die.
Also, doesn't that mean does it follow the other trope too, where the black person's the first one to die in a horror film?
Well, he's the only one to die.
My point exactly.
It's the only
Well, Jack died.
Jack. Okay, but he's the only one killed. Like for the horror movie, which I actually kind of like that it's not a bunch of deaths, but
Yeah.
So for some reason that thought popped in my mind, and I wonder if maybe a little bit that has Stephen King mad too.
Maybe. I mean,
you could have just called it Haunted Hotel.
I mean, there's a lot of like minor things The Shine does throughout the film, but there's nothing significant that really like stands out as, oh, if this had not been here, this movie would have been so different. So
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
Well, so damn it, I'm gonna try and not reference its sequel as much as I can moving forward. But the whole concept of like the ghosts and like all of the supernatural forces that work in the hotel actually popping off because Danny was there and because he brought so much power to the place that it started doing things that it doesn't usually do. It makes me wonder if they had a little more time or could budget the story a little bit, if we could have found out that perhaps those the twin girls actually had some bit of like Shining to them, which is why their dad actually went nuts and killed them.
Well, if you take it, I'm gonna try also not to like compare the book to the movie because it's not fair.
I really want to read the book now because it feels very different.
In the book, the only thing the hotel wants is Danny.
Mm.
And it wants to kill him. It does not want Jack to do it. Because it wants Danny to become part of the hotel and take his power. It just uses Jack as an instrument to try to keep Danny there. And the mother's completely inconsequential.
So she's the character who wouldn't need to be there then. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so someone's got to save Danny at the end. He's still... In the book, he's 5. Which is also interesting because it tries to write it from a point how a 5-year-old would understand things. When the movie, he seems to be a little older than 5.
Like maybe 7? Yeah.
Yeah, 7 or 8, but still older than 5. And 5 is very young to have a kid try to figure out that, a hotel's got an ability to eat your shine.
Or to trick your crazy dad into getting lost in a hedge maze.
Well, that doesn't happen in the book.
Oh yeah, there isn't even a hedge maze in it.
No, in the book, they're hedge animals, and they come to life and chase him, the kid.
I think I was reading somewhere that they didn't do it in the movie
he-
because that'd be too much of a budget to do.
Yeah. Well, and the TV movie showed that because it looked like crap in the TV movie. But in the book, the dad redeems himself at the end gets them out of the hotel, then blows the hotel up with the boiler. So in the end, the dad's redeemed in the book.
Man, what?
Not so much in the movie.
My mind is blown. Okay.
But here's the
Hence why Stephen King doesn't like it.
Here's the thing, though. While he gets redeemed and while he starts off good, in the end, in the book, I do have a soft spot for how Jack Nicholson does it. I think it's significantly different from how King wanted it and how it was originally written. Sure, but I think that doesn't diminish Kubrick's vision at all.
Oh, not at all.
I think Nicholson gives a stellar performance in this.
Yep. Nicholson is awesome in this movie.
100%.
I judge them as two separate things, and I always have.
That's fair. That's very fair. It's one of those weird adaptations that you like it, but in spite of the original. Like it's not so much that you don't like the original, but like they are both serviceable in different ways.
Well, there's an old story that Kubrick, when he got the rights,
I heard about this.
Took a look at the book and then threw it in the garbage.
What?
And then wrote his own thing on it. It's like, yeah, that kind of sounds like Kubrick, quite honestly. So it's not really surprising.
I'd love to sit down with Stanley Kubrick just for 5. I know he's dead, but I would love to sit down with him for 5 minutes and just pick his brain, just figure out how he works.
Go to his house and see his archives.
Oh,
good lord, that man! What the?
I can only imagine that's just a mess to get through.
Yeah, he photographs everything. He would send people he sent people 10 different hotels to photograph patterns at those hotels because he wanted to compare patterns for the movie. It's like, really?
And Ryan, you wondered how his budget got so big.
Yeah, no, I like it's becoming clearer and clearer to me.
So I have some discussion questions, gentlemen. We'll see which ones of these we'll hit up. We'll try to get through as many as possible. What are your thoughts regarding the structure and design of the Overlook Hotel itself, since we're just on that subject right now? And how does the film use impossible space to set the scene, and how well does this film use colors? A lot of stuff all at once, I know.
Well, I particularly like the interior of the hotel because it is very easy to kind of lose track of where you are, but I also like that because it almost feels like the interior of the hotel is almost like a Rubik's Cube. And like it feels like the disorientation is intentional, and it can be like an intentional effect of the hotel, because the hotel as a living supernatural entity is trying to get you lost within its walls so that it can work its magic on you. So I thought that translated very, very, very well. And having locations be vastly different colors, you could feel just how removed all three of them were from each other. So whenever you saw one person by themselves, the other two members of their family might as well have been 1,000 miles away, because they're just so isolated within this massive fucking ghost house.
Yeah, I agree, and I also like the dichotomy in the hotel. When they're all in their apartment together, the apartment part of it, it's more cozy and home, and that's when Jack's the most normal, until the end. That's when Jack's the most normal, waking up in bed, eating breakfast. It's when they get separated, when they go after being there for a month, and they're all basically existing in different parts, and Jack's basically existing in that giant empty room where he's getting no writing done, or at least no effective writing done, as he just wastes paper upon paper and throwing trees, coming up with no ideas. Yeah, the hotel really is the primary character of the movie, other than maybe Jack, is the location itself.
That's definitely a good way to put it.
I strongly agree.
What are your thoughts regarding the camera work in this film? The transitions, the tracking shots, the close-ups, all of it. What do you guys think of that camera work?
I liked it.
We're getting very detailed this week.
Well, I liked it. The problem is, some of it brought out the fact that this was that kid's first acting job.
Yeah.
The extreme close-ups on when he got scared and stuff looked like elementary school drama.
Yeah.
Of how a kid would look scared.
I'm also surprised Kubrick was
so
okay with that.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe that was the best he can get out of the kid.
Mm.
I mean, he can't belittle and berate and send the kid to therapy for 10 years like he can Duvall. So
Yeah.
to get
He's
that
also he's also lying to the kid about like, oh, this is just a drama. So you don't like. I want you to get something close to mortal terror, but I can't tell you it's mortal terror. So I have to tell you it's something else and see if I can get something close to it.
Well, I'm surprised he didn't just tell the kid his parents were dead or something to see what his reaction would be, because these 70s directors just all seem to do that.
I'd say you should say, hey, did you ever see that Lion King movie, kid? But it hasn't come out yet, so I guess that wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, exactly.
You should be Simba for this one.
Oh God.
No, I think the close-ups outside of the kid were more or less good, and the tracking shots following the tricycle were fucking great.
Yep.
But the
That
one
shot the movie.
the one close-up I love a lot is the one where Jack's in the freezer. Like, just that one upward angle, just kind of showing him upside down, just making him look like he's even more insane. Like, that was a really solid, like, just good work there, you know? Especially in comparison to Duvall on the other side of that door, too.
Yeah, there were shots I liked throughout the movie. Like, I like the opening when Jack's driving up to the Overlook for his interview, because that really spells out the isolation of where he's driving. That there's literally nothing up there, and I've been there. There's nothing up there. And the shot where her and Danny are going to the maze for the first time, and it shows Jack looking at the model
That's so cool, yeah.
of the hotel.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's looking down on the maze, and then it goes down to the maze. That shot is just great.
Yeah, my compliment is for those things, but also honestly, I have to refocus on Nicholson, because he's just insane in this movie, and I love it. So every time the camera's on Jack, it's magic is happening. Like it's a combination of the cinematography that they do in like the very interesting angles that they choose to shoot from to just like show just how fucking nuts he is, but it's also Jack knowing how to play to the camera without playing directly to the camera. So every time he's on screen, I feel like it's magic.
Yeah, while I will understand why King wasn't a fan of him, I've just like, sorry man, I get you, but man, I just love watching this guy work. He's just so good.
Yeah. I completely agree with the idea that he doesn't fit what Stephen King wanted out of the character. I can 100% agree with that, especially if they were going for somebody who needed to be sympathetic and likable at the beginning, and then we see his descent into madness. That's not Jack Nicholson, but Jack Nicholson does his own thing, and he does the Kubrick version very, very well.
How do you gentlemen feel about the choice of music for this film and how it feeds into the atmosphere created by it?
I love the fact that there is barely any music in this movie. Like, and they do, again, I'm like, right, I don't want to bring up the sequel too much. They do the same thing in the sequel, where you'll just get these harsh chords all of a sudden, and that's kind of like your intro into what's coming up, but there's no like, well, for one, there's no music that's going to date it,
which is very
bugs
good.
me,
yeah,
which bugs me in horror movies. And there's no huge, like, as much as I love John Williams, this is not a movie made for huge instrumental,
Right.
because you're supposed to be isolated, so the music should be harsh and isolated, like A Winter in the Rockies. And I love the musical score for this one, right along with the cinematography.
Same. It does such a good job of bringing you into the isolated mindset that the characters are supposed to be feeling. It's very jarring. It's very dissonant. There aren't like catchy tunes and themes that you're gonna be like, oh, this music means I'm supposed to be feeling this way. Like, that type of musical scoring absolutely has a place, and John Williams is a master of that shit, and I love it. But this isn't. That's not necessary for this type of movie. So yeah, I think his choice of score gets at what he's going for perfectly.
I don't know, guys. I think I would have liked some Duel of Fates in this movie, but that's just me personally.
Jeez.
Just imagine Jack Nicholson riding up in like a sand scooter, with lightsaber out, like, okay, I'm gonna kill my kid. Here we go.
He rips the fire axe out of the case, and then it becomes a lightsaber axe. A light axe.
He rips it out with the Force.
Oh yes.
That would be fucking great.
Dick Halloran gets cut in half as soon as he steps foot into the hotel.
Well, no. He's trying to cut this. He's trying to go at Jack from up the stairs, and Jack's like, "No, I've got the high ground."
I've got the high ground. We're gonna have to make that joke in Doctor Sleep.
Oh God.
Yeah, definitely.
Why did I waste it here? I'm fucking stupid.
Derp.
So, Ryan, I already know your answer, and I think I know Derek's answer, but we'll let him dive into it a bit more. Have you read the original novel?
No, but I really want to now.
Yes, I have. Twice.
And I'm assuming, having read it twice, it's a very good film, or a very good book.
It is. It's one of his best books. I've read a lot of Stephen King, his good and bad, and he's got bad. He does. No one releases 60-some books without some that aren't the best. But yeah, it's really good, and it's really terrifying. Like, it does a good slow burn too, because it's still just the three of them at the hotel. And it builds up, like, things like the maze animals work really well in a book, and it's terrifying because it's all coming from the perspective of a 5-year-old who's feeling like he's being left alone because the mother's trying to deal with the father who's slowly going mad, and it leaves the boy to his own devices in a hotel that's literally telling him it's trying to eat him.
That sounds pretty terrifying, honestly.
And there's more with the hotel. Like, the ghosts are much more interactive in the book with Danny and Jack. Just not the mom. Although Scatman Crothers does not die in the book.
Yeah, I remember. I know that part. Yeah.
Yep. Nobody dies in the book except Jack.
Jack just getting shit on all around. Okay.
So in terms of Stephen King's, like, actual pieces of work, the only book of his that I've actually read was It. And it scared the shit out of me. That was really, really good. Stephen King is really, really good at doing horror from a child's perspective. And it's something about getting your audience back into the mind frame, or that point of view of a child, when you do it really, really well, and you kind of spend a good amount of time kind of priming people's imaginations, because when you're a child, your imagination is limitless, but that also means your capacity for terror is limitless, because anything bad can happen to you. And so he rides a really fine line in kind of maximizing your imagination in order to maximize the terror that he hits you with after a while. So he's really, really good at that shit. I really want to read this. I know it's primarily from Danny's point of view. The Shining from a child's point of view is going to be one of the most horrifying things I've ever read.
Can I tell you a short story?
Please.
Go ahead.
So it was the first adult novel I ever read.
Ooh.
I was 9.
No!
It took me a month.
Oh.
My mom said we would go for walks after we watched it. I grew up in a very small town. After I read it, and she said we would be walking down the street, and I would purposely, unknowingly, walk across the street to not walk near sewer drains because of that book. And I'm like, yeah, Mom. When she told me the story, I'm like, yeah, I was a 9-year-old, and you let me read a story about a book about clowns that eat children. I still hate clowns to this day. I can't stand them, and it's because of that. So it always has a special place in my heart, despite the fact that in the middle of it, there is a really awful scene that I have no idea how it got through the editors.
Yeah, what?
I have no idea what he was thinking. I don't know how it got through the editors. Were they high like he was? There's possible.
I still don't understand. I haven't seen It Chapter 2 yet.
It's not in there. Don't worry.
Okay, thank God. How? Why?
No.
Why'd you do this?
And It Chapter 2 is not nearly as good as It Chapter 1. By the
It's
way.
not, but it's not horrible.
It's not.
It has its moments. It's just a little too long.
With it, the children's sections were always better than the adult sections, so it was natural that the first movie was probably going to be better than the second one.
I kind of have a soft spot for the original It drama, like film dramatization, because
The TV
Tim Curry
miniseries, yeah.
Is the man.
Yeah.
Tim Curry's the man.
And who's the actor that played Ben? Fuck. Adult Ben.
John Ritter.
Yes, John Ritter. Three's Company. Oh man.
Night Court was there too. What's his Harry? I don't remember his last name from Night Court.
Yeah.
It was Richie.
Just good times. I'm sorry, I've completely derailed us, but yeah, Stephen King is great at child horror.
I mean, Ryan, derailing us is part of the job. That's what we do. Okay, question. Who ultimately is the protagonist, and who is ultimately the antagonist of this film?
Well, I think Derek brought it up earlier that the main antagonist is pretty much the hotel. It's like without a doubt, the main antagonist is the hotel. And by towards the end of the movie, you've seen so many facets, not only physically but also just like the actual personality of the hotel, that it really becomes a character in its own right. So yeah, I would definitely say the main antagonist would be the hotel, and in a roundabout way, I feel like the protagonist was successfully done as Danny.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it managed to the story managed to shoot around Danny so that he was the focus of it, but it didn't ask too much of Danny as a character. It was just a kid trying to get through a hotel that wanted to eat him.
Well, and on top of that too, I do like how it starts off with Jack coming off as the protagonist in the beginning, but they do a great 180, at least partway through the film, maybe a third or halfway through, and it's like, oh, nope, that's not going to be him. We're going to go to the kid instead.
Well, and they try to keep it like Jack's not wholly gone, even when he's at the bar drinking, and he realizes the guy he's talking to is Grady.
Yeah.
You could tell he's not completely gone on, because he's like, hey, aren't you the guy that murdered your family while you're up here? So he hasn't completely bought in at that point. But yeah, I mean, they did do an excellent job of working around the kid so that you wouldn't have to rely on his acting chops to hold the final act. It's more the mother and the father, and the kid's kind of like the prize.
the plot MacGuffin.
Yeah, the plot MacGuffin. That it's mainly Shelley Duvall and Jack Nicholson that are doing the heavy lifting.
And they do a great job combined.
Yeah.
What does Shining mean to you?
It's largely about addiction and failure to deal with addiction, domestic abuse, and maybe guilt. Jack Nicholson feels guilty through the whole thing, even when he's yelling, saying, I broke his arm, it was 3 years ago, she won't let me down, but you can tell there's still guilt about what he did there, and he doesn't, even at that point, I don't think he truly wants to hurt the boy. He's just, the book did it well too. The book did a little better because Stephen King's basically writing about himself and his addiction issues. But it's, for me, it's largely about guilt, about holding on to guilt. And I didn't think the wife was kept reminding him of it, but you could tell even when she's meeting with the nurse with Danny at the beginning, she knows. And the nurse knows too that Jack has had that issue in the past, but for me it was about guilt.
How about you, Ryan?
So when you originally asked this question, I thought you were referring to what do Danny's powers mean ultimately in the film?
I kind of meant that, but I do like the
Okay.
different read of the question though. It's a good read.
No, I like that read too. I'll try to answer both. For for from Danny's point of view and like as essence like what shining means, I think like going back to what I said about how Stephen King is really, really good at writing from a child's point of view and like using that to like really amplify the horror that you're feeling. I think ultimately, The Shining is kind of like a child's potential, like it kind of reference like a child's potential to be anything or to believe in anything, that anything is actually possible because like the hard and fast rules of the world haven't set in for this child as of yet. And so it makes sense that the central protagonist, who is a child, is the most powerful thing imaginable because his imagination knows no bounds. So that's really what his power is kind of represented for me, and that I feel like they go into that better at more in the sequel as well. So we'll save that for next time. But I think ultimately that's what The Shining, the magic, would be for me.
Okay.
In terms of what the movie is talking about in general, yeah. I think like the aspects of like guilt and alcoholism are definitely there. I think it gets more towards like the general feeling of like the dangers of isolation, because like you mentioned earlier, Derek, when they're in their like family unit and like they're all together, it looks really, really cozy, and you can see that Jack is more normal. And is definitely like more just like a normal part of the family. But as like this massive hotel is working on them, you're constantly seeing them in separate rooms, in different rooms, and the isolation of it is really screwing them over. The only ones that you see really sticking together for a good portion of the film are Danny and Wendy. And I think it's because of that the hotel can't really like work its terror on them until the third act, when they're all separate because Jack is trying to kill them all. So I would say isolation would be like the primary like danger in like of the movie in my eyes.
A very on point film to watch during a quarantine.
Yes, exactly.
When writing this novel, Kane was going through his own battle with alcoholism, as we've already discussed a little bit. How does this show in the narrative, and do you think this film accurately depicts those struggles of someone going through that? Why or why not?
It does and it doesn't. It does show some of it. When they're getting the initial tour, and the guy's like, well, if you want alcohol, you have to bring your own, and he's so quick to go, well, we don't drink, to try to dissuade anyone from making comments about it. And when he finally does break down and drink, it's almost like they're trying to show the monster that comes out when he does that, because that's when he finally loses it and starts killing people. But I don't think Stanley Kubrick's movie cared as much about that as it did just kind of being an atmospheric horror movie with a hotel with a dad that just had issues. I don't think it was as focused on the alcoholism as Stephen King novel was. But that's just my view on it. I don't think it was too integral to the plot of the movie.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. This is where I admit this is where I admit that I feel like I missed that whole subplot of the movie, because I don't know if it was the version that I was watching, or if I just blunk and miss like the scene with the nurse right after she calls the nurse to come in to check on Danny.
It's so quick,
because I completely missed the whole like subplot of him being a recovering alcoholic. So that was kind of like that was lost on me throughout the
Ryan, do you know how expensive this movie is?
Like
we can't linger on this. We can't linger on this alcoholism. We gotta move.
3 hours. its sequel had 3 hours. We could have given a little bit more time on this subplot. But no, I think like Derek mentioned, it's very apt to kind of look at the book and the movie as two completely separate entities, completely separate works of art. If you're looking for like the dangers of alcoholism and like all of those metaphors, I don't think that's really in. Like, it's there, but I don't think it's nearly as prevalent as Stephen King would have wanted it to be. So I feel like I watched it primarily from Kubrick's like intended POV, like when I watched it, because it didn't seem to give a whole bunch of importance to the addiction storyline.
All right. Does this movie convince you that the moon landing was a hoax? Why or why not? And why do you think these claims ever came into existence?
For Christ's sake, because people are bored
dumb.
and have
People
no
are fucking dumb, dude.
I absolutely hate that Room 237 documentary. It is full of course, I hate all the... There's a show, I don't know if either one of you have Shudder.
I do not know, but it's something I've been wanting to get for a while.
There's a show on it called Cursed Films, where they want to talk about these films that were supposedly cursed, like one we'll be doing in the future called Poltergeist.
Right.
Where all you're doing by claiming those are cursed is taking the fact that the teenager was murdered by her ex-boyfriend, who was a monster, and a little girl was misdiagnosed with a stomach disease that they didn't say she had. So you're taking these mistakes and this horror and just going, well, no, it's not the world is horrible. It's just that this movie was cursed. And I don't... Moon landing being faked, they say, like, they show that Danny was wearing a NASA shirt in the movie during part of the time, and he was. And they're like, well, that's Kubrick saying he faked the moon landing. No, it's not. It's 1980. Everyone was wearing NASA shirts. They still wear NASA shirts.
Well, no, it's Space Force.
Yeah, now it's Space Force. Yeah, don't get me started. You mean Trump's Star Trek? Yes, it's lovely. But no, I can't stand that.
Yeah, I will take the numerous times that scientists have proven it is impossible to have faked the moon landing over somebody trying to read too much into the pajama shirt of a 5-year-old. That's dumb. That's dumb, guys. I'm sorry. That's dumb.
Don't worry. Coming up next week, I'll build my rocket to prove the world's flat. Kill myself in the Pacific Northwest.
Well, I was going to say, when I watched this movie, I got the impression that Kubrick was trying to tell us the Earth is flat.
Yeah. Oh, God, don't.
I mean, did you see how flat that diorama was? Clearly, that's a sign.
Yeah, clearly that's a sign.
Okay, moving on. I had to throw that in there because I just want to see, like, so those claims really just came from the sweatshirt? Is that really all it was?
No, those claims were around, I think, before The Shining. That people were thinking because Kubrick was so meticulous that it would take someone like him to do something like that. It was in their mind.
I mean, I can understand that particular logic.
Yeah, but no, it's people that just... we have several of those people now. They just don't like science.
Yeah,
I don't believe in science.
I've noticed America's gotten very science phobic in the past few years, and it's extremely noticeable in the past few months.
Yeah, you think?
I do think. I wish others would.
I wonder if there's a coincidence. Did Kubrick ever really care about King's original narrative? Why or why not?
No. Kubrick.
Yeah, I'll leave it to the person who actually read the book, because it doesn't feel like it.
No. Kubrick wanted to make a horror movie. It's a genre he had never worked in, and he wanted to make a horror movie that's a Kubrick movie. He liked the basis of The Shining. He liked the isolation, the hotel, the family dynamic. He didn't care about the magic shit, as he called it, the magic shit, as much. So, like, the fact that the title's The Shining, and the magic shit's in the title, didn't much concern him. He liked the base outline of it, and just used that, paid for the rights, and just used that because he liked it. But no, I don't think he gave two flying fucks about King's narrative.
Which is kind of a shame, because if he had just tweaked it a little bit, this could have actually been a super solid adaptation. But I think for what it is, it's still really good, just as on its own merits. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it brings to mind. This is going to be a very odd segue, but it brings to mind Dunkirk when we were doing the Christopher Nolan films.
Okay.
It's interesting because what I said about Dunkirk was that it felt like Christopher Nolan wanted to do a war movie, but he wanted to do a war movie his way, and so you get Dunkirk, it's playing with different timelines. It's got like amazing wide shots. It's got like really interesting character work, and it's completely unlike any other war film that we've seen. But it was distinctly Nolan. I feel like this is like that's the same way Kubrick approached The Shining, based on hearing all of that. He wanted to do a horror movie, but he wanted to do a Kubrick horror movie, so he got a setting that he liked. He threw out the stuff that he really didn't want to have in it. He paid lip service to the things that would like just barely hold the narrative together, and then he did the rest of it the Kubrick way. And it's a really good movie. It's not King's movie, but it's a really good movie because it's Kubrick's.
Well, and Kubrick's not stupid. He knows how popular Stephen King is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're gonna use his name, you're gonna take a property, people are gonna go to it just because they show, oh look, it's Stephen King's book, The Shining. Now I'm sure he didn't like Stephen King coming out right away saying he didn't like the movie. I'm sure that didn't help. But yeah, I'm sure that played a part in it, especially with the studio, who they're willing to back Kubrick movies, but they rarely made money.
As evidenced by this film.
Yeah, they rarely made money. I mean, say what you will about Michael Bay, but his movies always make money. Lots of it.
He knows what the audience wants. Explosions. Testosterone.
Titties.
Now cover titty. This is Michael Bay movies. No full nudity in Transformers. Just
amazingly suggestive camera angles.
Exactly.
I really imagine that there's going to be a day where he's just like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to make a porn. It's fine.
Porn doesn't have enough explosions, so it's time to do Michael Bay's.
Wrong kind of explosions, Ryan.
Michael Bay stuff. Yep.
Wrong kind of explosions.
The money shot is just accompanied by an explosion sound. Help!
I think Michael Bay porno was an image I probably didn't need in my
Michael Bay.
If you're tonight, but that's all right.
If you're listening, to Michael Bay, I want you to do this. I want you to make a pornography. I don't want it necessarily, but I want to see what you do within this genre. I would like to see you try.
Oh Jesus.
Okay, last question before we get too off the rail here. Is The Shining actually a horror movie? Why or why not?
I've wrestled with this. It's a lot of a psychological thriller.
Mm-hmm.
But it has enough horror elements. I mean, psychological thrillers don't have elevators opening up with rivers of blood flowing towards a 5-year-old. They don't show children's axed up bodies in hallways. So I think it's got enough that I still register it as a horror movie, but it's not your traditional horror movie, which is probably why it wasn't all that popular. It came out in 1980 at the height of like 80s horror.
Your Halloween, your Friday the 13th.
So people see horror movie, they're like, oh, we'll go see a bunch of kills, nubile teenagers, and they go to this psychological thriller with a family with a dad going crazy trying to kill them, and it probably wasn't their jam. So I get it from that standpoint, but I think horror is nuanced enough that you could have stuff like this or Midsommar or things that aren't necessarily just stab fests, but are still horror.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah. I agree with that too. I'm not entirely sure. Like, I don't, since I don't watch a whole bunch of the genre, I have a very loose concept on what makes something horror. I generally what it feels to me is like the movie, like, does the movie play on like the fears of the audience and really like paints through their perception of like terror and unease with possible supernatural like effects at work. And in that case, I definitely think this is a horror movie. It's definitely more on the psychological bend. And if you wanted to call it a psychological thriller, I wouldn't be arguing with you either. But I do think it has those very broad horror elements to it, with the supernaturalness and just the general rising of tension and fear, particularly from the eyes of a 5-year-old. So yeah, it's horror to me.
Yeah. Well, go back to your comparison, Ryan, where you said that Nolan made a war movie. It still distinctly feels like a war movie through and through. It's a different one, but it still feels like it. Here, I can definitely say that it doesn't feel like a horror movie a good chunk of the time. Like, for me, a horror movie doesn't necessarily need to scare me, because, I mean, if you've seen it enough, then, yeah, you're not going to scare, but it should at least kind of make me uneasy, unsettled. Like, I think I mentioned before, when I was a kid, I'd see Halloween, and while the movie itself wasn't necessarily terrifying, I would get an uneasy feeling of someone watching me every now and then because, hey, listen, I hear that music. He's around here somewhere. That kind of thing. So I don't get that unsettling feeling from here. Like, this movie doesn't linger with me like other horror movies do. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it still provides a very uniquely spooky experience, but not quite on the same level as some of the stuff we've seen. So I don't know. I'm always torn on this one myself a little bit, but I would say it has enough of the tropes going on to classify as a horror movie. But as far as it like staying up as a truly scary film, not quite.
Okay.
And I think some of it might be, for me anyway, is a little desensitization. I have seen so many horror movies at this point in my 40 years of life that the only things that really scare me anymore are documentaries.
Oh God, yeah.
About real life. So
like, the real life horrors and true crimes are just god awful. Yeah.
Well, and it's kind of why I love when I can convince my wife to watch these movies. I love watching them with her because she's so invested in them, that she feels the movies viscerally. That something I just don't do anymore. Like, I'm too much in my headspace to be scared of the movie. So it's kind of fun to watch somebody who like hides their face when something bad happens. Which she watched the sequel with me, and there's one scene that she couldn't watch.
I'm very curious
her about ahead of time.
I'm very curious what that's going to be.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I know what that scene is. I'm pretty sure. Because that was a rough scene, man.
It happens where I live. Hey, what do you know? But yeah, so some of it might be desensitized. I'm sure when I first saw this, you know, when I was under 10, I was probably scared shitless, as you would expect. But yeah, I don't really get scared of it by now. I just like the atmosphere.
Yeah.
You sound like my girlfriend now, because she likes to watch things with me specifically for my reaction. I react big. I get very invested.
Yeah, I remember watching Zombieland 2 with you. I remember some of those reactions.
Wow,
Zombieland 2? No, I wasn't like scared in Zombieland 2, but I was very like into the movie. Like when I watch anything, I get like into it. If it's engaging, if it's engaging me personally, I am very, very generous with my emotions towards the movie. But that's also pretty much the main reason why I don't really like to watch horror, because I don't like feeling scared, like really scared. It's not fun. It's not a fun experience for me.
If you'd like to see an example of Ryan, if you'd like to see an example of Ryan not enjoying being scared, you should check out our Five Nights at Freddy's video.
Oh God. I was so mad. I was so mad towards the end. I'm just gonna brute force this game. I'm so tired of these jump scares.
Ryan, if you want to follow us or if they want to send us an email to reach out to us, where could they email us at?
They can email us at, I'm not gonna hurt ya. I'm just gonna bash your fucking skull in. I'm just gonna bash it right in. Sorry. Mr. Torrance has left the building. No, they can email us at evacstation@gmail.com.
Indeed, we'll read your responses on our exclusive episodes, and on top of that too, we have an exclusive episode following this one. It'll be out the same week as this. It's either out already or it'll be out tomorrow for those who are listening. But it will be Dr. Sleep, the sequel to this. So if you enjoyed this and want to hear more, subscribe to our Patreon, and you can hear the rest of this conversation when we get to it. Yeah, you can also follow us on Tumblr, Twitter, or Facebook for suggestions, comments. We'd love to hear from you guys and knowing how we're doing and knowing how you're doing. Gentlemen, we're at the end of the show where we talk about the ranking of the film. Normally we do the platinum to trash, all the colors in between. But Ryan, as we have been doing for the horror season, it's the old bucket or fuck it method. I still don't know why we hold this one up at all. It's such a dumb, it's so dumb. But yeah, bucket of blood, or do we just say fuck it? This film's not good, gentlemen. Where do you fall in this one?
Oh, it's bucket of blood. It's bucket of blood. It's a top. It might be a top 10 film for me, let alone horror film. So it's definitely a bucket of blood.
Yeah, I am in 100% agreement. This is definitely despite its straying from the source material, which I'm sure is amazing in its own right, the film itself is a cinematic masterpiece. And it's definitely a classic piece of film. So it's absolutely a bucket of blood. Y'all should definitely check this one out if you're looking for some classic.
Mm-hmm. To be perfectly honest, if I was ranking this as a normal ranking, it'd probably be a high gold or low platinum. Like it's up there. Yeah, blood for me as well. And I will say this as an addendum. There's only one other straight up Stephen King movie from back in the day that I would put over this one. We have not covered it yet, Ryan, but we will cover The Mist one of these days. It is top tier for me. This is right up with that one, though.
Another
we
one
still
to
gotta
change.
check that out.
It's another one with the ending change.
But King liked that ending change from what I read.
He did. He loved it.
So I have to watch that movie. I actually haven't seen that at all.
It's really good. It's real good.
Just be prepared. You will be affected.
Oh no!
That ending will hit you like a ton of bricks.
Yep.
Oh.
But it might be one of my favorite endings to a film, period. So yeah, thank you for listening, and we will see you after the credits.
Bye.
Bye.